Welcome to the first breakout session at the ACRL New England Annual Conference. My name is Matt Bajun. I am the Information Literacy Librarian at Worcester State University, and I'm pleased to welcome you. Our speaker, Margaret Driscoll, received her MLIS from San Jose State University, and she is a bit of a world traveler. She's also worked at Arizona State University, Hong Kong International School in Hong Kong, California State University Channel Islands, and California State Santa Barbara, where she is currently working as the Learning Organization Librarian. Her session is entitled Growing a Learning Organization, and there'll be time for questions at the end. When there are questions at the end, please speak loudly, and we will no doubt re-say your question because this session is being streamed to our virtual conference. Without further ado, Margaret Driscoll.
Thank you, and welcome all of you to this wonderful event about professional development. The theme of this conference made me come across the country to be a part of it. This is very exciting. And I want to welcome those who are viewing this as a streaming server. And as you can imagine, in a state like California, we do a lot of virtual conferencing because it's so huge we can't get from north to south very easily. So I'm really familiar with those who are doing it at a distance. So welcome to all of you as well. Okay. Reagan Anthon's theory was that libraries are growing organizations. And so that's happening all the time. So a learning organization fits really well into libraries being growing and changing with the times and just as a matter of course. That's what we do. First of all, I'd like to find out a little bit about what you know about learning organizations, and I'm not going to do a fancy polling. I wasn't sure how the wireless was going to work up here. So just a show of hands, how many of you have never heard the term learning organization? Okay, it's been around for a long time, but it is not necessarily commonly known in the library world. You've heard the term of learning organization, but you don't really know much about it. Okay, that's kind of what I expected. And you know about learning organizations, but you wonder how it applies to libraries. Yeah. Because it was a terminology used in the business world. That is, libraries are getting more like businesses all the time. And how many wish your job title would just be really easy to shorten to something like LOL? Gotta have humor, that's there. So let's look at the foundation of what is a learning organization. In 1990, so that was a while ago, Peter Senge wrote the book, Fifth Discipline. Since then, he has written a book that is called the Field Book, the Fifth Discipline Field Book. Both of those are excellent resources. The Field Book talks about very specific ways to make each of the principles happen in your workplace. So the first thing is to understand what that learning organization environment is. What does this mean? The cornerstone of a learning environment is systems thinking. It's really easy to think about the here and now, and if I do this, that will happen. But it's important to understand that the organization is a dynamic process. Nothing stays still. And so the thought of the long term and what that will mean is very, very important. In that case, instead of the short term, you're thinking of the long term. It's important to allow for delays, for people to think and process what's going on, and having a very active feedback loop. So you get information about what's happening. For example, in a library environment, let's think about that the library has decided they're going to purchase ebooks or expand their ebook collection. So acquisitions, that area goes through the process of figuring out their workflows of how to order them, how to bill them, how to get them into the catalog. They work in conjunction with cataloging, but may not think about the impact this will have on the IT department and being able to work this into the system. They may not think about the added impact for the long term for the reference desk or the circulation desk. So you want to look at the big picture and think of the whole library as a system. We all work together. Then there are some disciplines or component technologies that Peter Senge speaks of. One is a discipline of personal mastery, and this goes beyond just learning stuff. It is continually clarifying and deepening your personal vision. You want to live in a continual learning mode, and I think that happens quite a bit for librarians, not necessarily for libraries as a whole. Personal mastery isn't a possession, it is a process, and it is a lifelong discipline. So here you go, continuous learning. There's the discipline of mental models, and this is kind of your deeply ingrained assumptions, your generalizations, the things you don't necessarily talk about. But you want to turn the mirror inside to determine where are you actually coming from, and then being able to unearth that, to unearth those internal pictures, to allow to balance a conversation of inquiry and advocacy within your conversations. This fosters openness as opposed to any kind of game playing or politics. If you start looking at what are your basic assumptions, what do we think this is, and converse about it, it opens it up. Allows you to carry on learningful conversations where you have what you are offering to a conversation, you ask really open questions to those you are conversing with, and you learn something through the conversation. And allow yourself to be open to the influence of others. The discipline of building a shared vision. Now, most of our libraries have got a vision statement, a purpose and values statements, but we want to build that into a shared vision, not just coming down from above, from admin, so that people can identify on an individual basis how they contribute to that vision, how their jobs work toward it, and to create a shared vision of the future. Our future is unknown, as always, but libraries are facing a lot of changes as the technological world changes, as our societal world changes, and our culture changes. Having a shared vision increases the clarity, the enthusiasm, and the commitment of everyone in the library. And then there is the discipline of team learning. We want to suspend those assumptions we've identified and think together in our teams and our groups. You can discover insights that are not identifiable or attainable individually, and recognize the patterns of interactions in a team that undermine learning. That is I'm sure you can think of cases right now in being in a group environment or a team environment where learning has been undermined and shut down. Okay, so in simple terms, a learning organization is a place where employees excel at creating, acquiring, and transferring knowledge. That's the very simplistic form. Okay. More recent research has identified that there are 3 building blocks that are required: a supportive learning environment, concrete learning processes and practices, and leadership behavior that reinforces learning. See how many times learning is in there? It's continuous. The organizational benefits are, there's a very definite link between continuous learning and performance improvement. That has been found to be true. Not only are people learning new skills and new ways of doing things and new ways of approaching things, but that feeling of being supported in order to expand yourself, it builds on very much on your feeling of morale and that sense of being engaged. When you are supported for your own growth, your own professional growth, you can become more engaged. So, how do we prepare for growth? What do we feed and water the roots with? First of all, we have to define who we are and where we want to go. And what do you need to know to get there? So you have your mission, your values, your strategic goals, your competencies. Identify who you really are. Okay? You want to instill excitement for the learning organization vision and create an environment that supports, enables, encourages, and celebrates learning. You want to aid, as I said before, you want to aid individuals with finding out and identifying themselves and their job with the vision of your library. How do they contribute to the whole? What does doing this one task do to the benefit of the library and to our patrons? It also helps, you want to help people take ownership of their own professional growth and share with colleagues. So, I started at UC Santa Barbara 9 months ago as in a new position called the Learning Organization Librarian. It is part of the, believe it or not, HR, Organizational Development and Effectiveness team. It's the first time I have, no, it's not really true, but in a large university, it's the first time I've been considered administration. And you know that divide, don't you? You know what I'm talking about. Okay. I identify with librarians and library staff much more than with administration. But that's where I am. Why I came to do this was because of the support that was there to develop this program. And I'm going to share with you where we are so far, what we've done, where we're going, some of the successes, some of the questions and challenges we still have. So let's talk about what was there when I arrived. So they had decided that this was going to be the new thing that they were going to put together. They hired someone, me, to do this role. And this is what I do all day, every day, is deal with the professional development, training, cross-training, and knowledge sharing of our community of librarians and library staff, which is about 150, and our student assistants, which number about 200. So I am aiding 350 people to hopefully reach their goals, and with an understanding that they may have goals that are outside of the library. We may be training people out, as well as training them up and training them in. So it's a very holistic approach to supporting the individuals and what they want to do with their lives, because when they want to do it, they contribute more. Most libraries have got funding for librarians to do exactly what we're doing here, to do professional development, to attend conferences. In our case, the union said you had to give them $750 a year for professional development. Our library administration decided to double that. So each librarian has $1,500 each year to do professional development. And usually that includes going to conferences. It has now been opened up to professional membership in organizations and those kinds of efforts, taking classes, doing whatever librarians want to do. What is really unique about what's happening at UC Santa Barbara is that they have put aside $70,000 this year to support the training and professional growth of library staff and student employees. That's the uniqueness of it. And I was thinking about, in the keynote speech, how we are responsible for our own professional development. And there are a lot of library support staff who consider their position in the library, their role, their work, to be their career. And many of them feel that they are professional. They do not have the master's degree. They are not necessarily librarians, but this is their calling and their passion to be doing the support work of library work. So we consider their professional development equally important. Where do you see that, huh? Where do you see that? That is so cool. Yes. No, 70,000 separate in addition. And it is not a per person amount. We are encouraging professional development and training for everyone, and they request it, and it's on a, we consider it as it comes through. Sometimes we will pay the entire cost of something, sometimes part of it. So far, it has not much involved travel, so it's amazing how far $70,000 can go. Yes, and I will be moving into that. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to repeat the question. Someone was asking me if the 70,000 was above and beyond the librarian amount of per person, or whether it was included it, and it is above and beyond. Okay. Also, our union contracts stipulate specifically that union employees have up to 40 hours a year paid release time for professional development, whether it's done on the job or outside of the workplace. They are paid. They do not have to take lunch hours to do professional development. The university as a whole, the UC, decided that they wanted to support it even more so. And so there's a policy for all employees, whether they are union represented or not, that they have up to 80 hours a year paid release time for professional development. So you can see there's a ton of support here from the University of California and our campus administration. Most of this information was unknown to the people who worked at UC Santa Barbara. So it's been a surprising and wonderful piece of news to give to them that they have this support. So can you do this without all of this? I know that this is not an audience of people who have $70,000 available to them, nor necessarily union contracts to support it. Even if they have if you have a sense that your organization supports continuous learning, it may not be at this level. Can you do it without all this? Yes. You can do it with less money, definitely. There's a ton of online resources available to that are free. There's also a huge network of archived information and archived webinars and training events. You do, however, need to have that commitment from above in order to do this. So that's the first step in any library, is to get administration approval. Okay. So let me ask a quick question. Your library culture is totally ready to do this. Raise your hand. Excellent. Awesome. Your library financially supports librarians only for professional development. Yeah, that's very common. How many of you have support for staff too? Really? Oh, you guys have just warmed my heart. That's wonderful. Thank you. I did not know that existed to that extent. Maybe it's an East Coast thing, because it doesn't happen on the West Coast. How about those who have a culture that supports learning, but it's not in any systematic way? It's just, they just say, yeah, go ahead, do it. Yeah. For how many of you would this be a huge culture shift in your library? Yeah, that exists as well. Often in small libraries where one person is doing everything, there's some problems with that. Okay, so what do we have to do to make a strong trunk to support that growing? Here are some tools that I've put in place in order to do that. One is a need to take a pulse of your current culture. The way to find out if your culture is a learning organization, there are all kinds of aspects that either exist to a high degree, frequently done, or to a low degree, is hardly ever done. And these are aspects that are in three categories: what is done by the individual, what is done within teams and groups, and what is done in the organization as a whole. These perceptions of what happens frequently, occasionally, or not at all will define how much of a learning organization you have already in place. So we did this survey and got some amazing answers from it. We also are sharing the benefits of learning for the individual. As I'll show you later, there are very dramatic benefits to the organization, but there are very definitive benefits to the individual as well. We have a library wiki, and I maintain, there's a word cloud and some information about the 10 best reasons or the 10 benefits of lifelong continuous learning. And as I continue with my research, I add things to that for the individual. You want to communicate that frequently. And then you want to provide opportunities. I put out a monthly newsletter, monthly list of courses. Every month, and I'll show you this in a moment, every month we have a theme. And so I will highlight what is happening that month based on that theme. This is an example of April was time management. Very few people had the time to come, but our theme was time management. And the next slide is a listing of, divided by topic, online webinars, online courses, on that kind of thing that's happening, most of them free or very low cost. So I put that out every month. People can peruse them and see what interests me. There's not a lack of stuff going on out there. So, those are the tools that we use, and here's how our journey started. We started just last fall. I started with weeks of interviewing all the department heads, the unit heads, tons and tons of staff, finding out what they do, getting to know them. It was a great excuse to go around and meet everybody. Find out what they identified as the training needs they thought they needed to have, because everyone's will be different, depending what is already in place. So, in all phases, doesn't matter where you are in the growth of a learning organization, you need to communicate the value of continuous learning and promote learning opportunities regularly, frequently. So that's an ongoing theme. Based on the survey that we did, we found out there were a number of things that our library staff felt we didn't do very well. One of them was providing leaders the opportunity to coach those that they lead. So we developed a class that we invited all of the supervisors at all levels to come to, where we talked about the philosophy of supervision and introduced ways to do coaching. And they were getting ready for their performance evaluations. And we wanted to help them look at performance evaluations not as a judgmental tool, but as a support and growth tool and a coaching tool. They also told us that we didn't measure or track what we were doing learning-wise. So in that regard, we are now tracking all of the training, the attendees, and the costs of everything we do. The report that I can generate from that software gives it by department, lists individuals, what they've done, and the cost of who's spending what. Even though it's not a departmental budget, they don't have to think about it. They will get reports about what is being done in their department by the people in their department. I'm sorry, can we go back for a second? The other thing is assessing the learning events. I set up a very short online form that I invite people to fill out, and it's just a few questions. It's sort of like those little paper things you get every time you're at an event. I have been surprised at the insightful and reflective responses we have been receiving from people. It is very, very apparent that they are appreciating. And some of it's not all positive, but they've all been very appreciative of the kind of training that we've been offering. Okay. Apparently, oh yes, there's a question.
Just that you mentioned the software that you use to do the tracking. What product?
It's called Training Manager. Okay, it was asked what the software was that we use to track it, and it is called Training Manager. I actually looked at a couple of them, and this was the one that was most workable, most user-friendly, and does some pretty amazing things, so I'm happy with it. The other thing, apparently, that they didn't do well, we didn't do well, is to make lessons learned available to everyone and sharing with that. So after having done the survey, and it was all anonymous, I put up the results and my analysis of the results onto the wiki and sent an email to everyone, making it available to every single staff member in the library who wanted to take a look at what were the results of this survey we did. And I caution about surveys like this because some people have a fear that anonymous really means anonymous. And they were a little concerned that if they had negative feedback, negative responses, it would somehow come around and bite them in the butt. This campus has had a number of years of transition, changing leadership, discombobulation. It has not been a really wonderful environment over the last 10 years. Lots of difficulties. Now the last 2 have been quite different than that, have been way better. But so I understand that people have had experiences, very real experiences, that have broken their trust. So even though the results were a lot of things we did well, and the organization did really well, there was also very honest answers about what we didn't do well. And so we've taken that to heart. So, onward. Now we started over the winter and spring with phase 2. Again, you want to promote and communicate the value and learning opportunities. We started a student assistant onboarding program with 200 students working in all different departments at all different kinds of jobs. We decided that we wanted to put together a program where all of the basically being an employee and what is a library purpose, customer service, all of those things, do that into one place to save the time of every unit supervisor to use their time for job-specific training. So we put together a narrated Prezi, including videos of current student assistants talking about what they liked about working in the library. And we covered all of those categories. We covered the environment. What is a library environment about? Stuff that was important for all jobs, how to do their timesheets, this, that, and the other thing. Patron service and tips for success. And then we had a review exercise that, in combination with what was covered in this narrated Prezi and the new student employee manual that we put together, they did this review exercise online. The results come back to me. I separate it by supervisor, send it on to the supervisor. So we had to do all the current students this spring. We've launched it. They've all been doing it. And then it will be a part of the first week of the employment of every new student assistant, so that they get a basic onboarding understanding of how important they are and how important the library is. We also started a learning and growth speaker series, and we were able to bring in, because of that budget, 3 thought leaders in libraries and elsewhere. First we had Otis Redding. Isn't that funny? No, it was Edmund Otis. Every time his name come up, I was in the wrong place. He came in and did a workshop on resiliency and how to build resiliency. Michael Stevens, who probably many of you have heard of, came in and talked about learning always, learning everywhere, and the changes in libraries and the future of academic libraries. And Char Booth, who is a well-known California speaker and was also one of the heads in the immersion program, the ACRL immersion program. She talked about reflective teaching, reflective learning, and instructional design. So we were able to bring these 3 people in. As I said before, librarians go to conferences all the time, and they get that cool stuff, like hearing people speak and present all this new information. Library staff frequently do not. So this was purposefully done to bring part of that conference experience back to everyone. And allow for that excitement and that mind-bending stuff that happens at conferences to take place in our own environment. As a result of all of those conversations that I had with people when I first started in July and August of last year, decided that with all of these wish lists that everybody had, a lot of them were just professional information, things like interpersonal communication, leadership, time management, project management, goes on and on, safety training. So we decided to put together a monthly thematic calendar so that these things don't go through the cracks any longer. So each month has a theme. We provide at least one program, sometimes 2 or 3 in each of those months that fits the theme. In January was safety and security, and we're in a renovation and building project, so there's a lot of safety concerns. We did fire extinguisher training out in the parking lot. Everybody got to put out fires. We did CPR and first aid training and AED training. Tons and tons of our staff now can respond in an emergency, and they feel empowered by that knowledge. Yeah. Okay. The question was, do we require training or are they all volunteer? Requiring training is a slippery slope. You want everybody to know it, but someone might go, you can't make me do it. You know. So requiring it, we don't do much of. We strongly encourage. And I've worked with department chairs to send that message to their people and encourage them as to why it's important for them. So we have different turnouts to all of our programs because it is volunteer. Depends on what it is and whether they're interested. Oh, yes.
I'm just wondering if you have ever required people to go to conferences to come back and do something for the rest of the staff as part of, say, we gave you the support to go to this is what you owe us to come back. Or if you think that might be a good idea.
The question was whether we require people who go to conferences to come back and share what they've learned with others. And that whole knowledge sharing thing is probably one of our biggest challenges. It is not the culture there to do that, and it has not been required. So we are starting that and asking people in our monthly newsletter to tell us where you've gone, what you've done, what you've learned, and share it back. It's a culture thing. As I said, this particular campus has had some very disruptive history in the last years. And there's not a whole lot of trust. And trust is required in order to say, this is what I've done and this is what I've learned. Because it kind of says, well, I didn't know it before. You know, that's that weird thing. I think it's a good idea. I lean more towards requiring, but I don't want to get anybody upset about it. So we highly encourage. So now we're into phase 3, and there's going to be tons more phases because this is not going to happen in a short period of time. Again, we want to promote the learning opportunities, and we want to communicate the value of those learning opportunities. This is a culture shift. Even if librarians feel that they are supported and professional development is a part of our world, and even if staff are interested in it, it's still a culture shift to be doing it systematically and encouraging it in a very open and timely way. So one of the things we wanted to do was to build that alignment between individuals and align that vision with working groups and individuals. Last year, they went through the process of redefining the mission statement and the values and all of that, and it was just published this last fall. So it's a perfect opportunity now to help people see, okay, here's this glorious thing that's on the website. The mission of the library is. What does that mean? What does that mean to somebody in interlibrary loan? What does that mean to somebody in GovDocs who's processing? You know, what each individual really get a personal connection with that. So that's one of the things we're going to be working on as we move forward. A new team was put together called the Employee Engagement Team. Engagement is a big word these days, as they talked about in the keynote, and it's a scary thing that only 30% of us really like what we're doing and really want to be doing what we're doing. That's a frightening number. So we have a new team, and the first thing we started was an employee recognition program. It's a peer recognition, and we decided to take these new values that the library just launched and give people the opportunity for a 2-month window, so it's going to take a full year to get through all 6 of them, take a 2-month window to nominate people in the library that they know, that they see, who is living that value. And each person who is nominated receives a button with an image of the value, and in the card that accompanies the button, we include the words of the nominator. It's an anonymous nomination. They don't know who nominated them, but they know what the person said about them. And they are encouraged then to nominate others. The first 2-month period, the first value, we had 80 nominations for collaboration. It was wonderful. At the end of that 2 months for each one of them, we do a random drawing for a $75 bookstore gift certificate. And so and then we take pictures of that. We also take a group shot picture, put that on the website. At the 6th month point of this program, we're going to have a party to just celebrate that people are participating, both as nominators and as nominees. And then at the very end, when we're all done with all 6 of the values, we will identify the top 4 people who have received the most nominations throughout all of the library values, and they will have breakfast with our university librarian and have an opportunity, no matter who they are, no matter where they are in the library, have an opportunity to sit down with her and talk about vision and goals and what the library is. So that's that program. It's very exciting and people are loving it. The other thing that is, as I mentioned, there are some challenges. Building an expert directory, or whatever one chooses to call it, and maybe expert is a little daunting, is a struggle for me. That's something I'm working on. We were told that we didn't have a database of employee talent, and that's true, we don't. And so I'd like to start one. And in this way, be able to identify and get diversity into teams, allow people to be involved in what they are interested in and what their skills are. For the time management class that we did last month, that we developed, I had 2 staff members who helped me because they volunteered. They have done a lot of study on time management techniques, and so the 3 of us put that on. I have another individual who is going to help me with the team building and team formation class that we're offering this next month. So if we know people are interested in things and have skills in things, even though they're not their job specifically, they can assist with other things, so to get them involved. And then we have lots more planning. At the time I made this, we hadn't done the time management yet. We have done it, and it was very wonderful. I'm working on a class on coaching for engagement as we move through to another performance review cycle. We will offer again the psychology or the philosophy of supervision, and then we will add this class to it to get more into coaching and talk about the whole engagement thing. The dynamic teams is next month, and is actually this month. It's May. And then we want to work on training for leadership at all levels. There's a lot of work to be done. As I mentioned before, I communicate a lot to individuals what the benefits of continuous learning are to them as individuals. There are also some very, very significant benefits to the library as a whole to support this kind of work. Retention, satisfaction, performance, you name it. There's tons and tons of benefits. One of the things that learning continuously does is helps people be more agile to adapt to change. Because they are changing. Every time you learn something new, you are changing. And we all are facing changes, whatever they are in our individual libraries. We're all facing some pretty significant changes. So it's worthwhile to do this kind of work. I'm humbled and honored to be a part of this and to act as a resource to 300 people in the UC Santa Barbara Library. I'm passionate about libraries. I'm passionate about learning. And how I got to do this, I don't know. It's one of those gifts. You know, I am one of those engaged employees. I love what I do and where I do it. So thank you for your attention. If you could open up, there's a PDF there. The slides from the presentation and this PDF are going to be on the website, so you can gather all of this and have it in your back pocket, so to speak. This last slide is some of the resources that I've maybe mentioned or provided for you. You can go explore them. 14 years ago, Peter Senge introduced the learning organization, and he said we needed to stop thinking about mechanical work, that we are all cogs in a wheel, and if everybody does this, then that happens, that sort of thinking, and start acting like gardeners. That's where I pulled my theme of growing a learning organization from. For a number of years, I have run a blog that promotes free and low-cost learning. And it really surprised me when my blog was called the most incredible blog for librarian professional development by a major blogger in Australia. It goes all over the world, and it's very exciting to be a part of it. So feel free to visit that. It's called Beyond Learning. And there's more information if you want more background information on Peter Senge's work as far as what learning organizations are. My contact information, my email information is there if you have specific questions or want to chat with me or work together on something. That would be wonderful. And then there's, again, the Prezi presentation is online. This whole slide is available online with the screen captures as a PDF of the Prezi. So, are there any questions? Well, the short story is that when I saw this job, someone's asked if I could talk about where I have come from and how I got to being in this position. Thank you for reminding me to repeat the questions. I thought I knew to do that, and it just doesn't happen naturally. It's a long story, and I'll share bits and pieces of it. The short story is that as I was out looking for what jobs were available and looking at what skills might I need, as they recommended in the keynote, to just keep scanning the horizon as to what was out there. I saw this job, and I read it, the description of what it was, and I saw me. It was just, this is what I want to do. And it was funny because when I interviewed and after they hired me, the librarians on the search committee said, we had no idea what you were going to do. This was written up, but we didn't really know what you were going to do. I said, I read it and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I've been in the academic library world since the early 90s and have worked all over the place in virtually every working aspect of libraries, with the exception of government documents and interlibrary loan. All the rest of them I have either worked in or managed. So I have a very broad understanding of what the demands and the needs and the struggles are of every department in the library. Throughout my career, I have always shared what I'm learning and what I know. I have always been writing, I have always been presenting, I have always been teaching. And that was actually what got me hired, was the fact that even though that wasn't my role, that's what I was doing. I'm a continuous learner. I figure that the day I stop learning, I'm dead. I mean, you'll know, I'm just dead. I don't know what to do when I'm not learning something. I'm right now taking 2 MOOCs. One on balance, better leadership, better life, so to get some balance in my world. And another one on, what is it called? I just started it. Help me out. I wrote it to you. It just started, and I haven't had time because I had to fly out here to. I mean, it just started on Tuesday. I forget what it was called. Oh, becoming a resilient person. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. I also took the MOOC, the hyperlinked library. Did any of you hear about that? That was through San Jose State? Amazing. They're going to be offering it again next spring. So keep your eye open for that. Michael Stevens teaches that. There's also a great advocacy for libraries MOOC that was run out of the University of Washington. I took that one too. That was very good. A lot of good stuff out there. You had a question. The question is, are all the UC campuses doing this? And the answer is no. They're all watching us. UC Davis is starting a similar process. They are starting it from, they've hired a outside contractor to come in and do some career planning, first of all, with all the staff. And they're going to move forward from that way. We will probably get to that, especially as the UC system goes more toward their performance appraisal tools. We'll be dealing with competencies rather than some of the other ways of how many times have you done this month? Yeah. You had a question earlier, and I.
So I think, I don't know everybody in this room, but many of us are in smaller operations and would never be able to have a person full-time dedicated to this, creating and sustaining a learning organization, a learning library. Can you give us your perspective on how we can achieve some of this? We won't be able to achieve all of it. How we can achieve some of this with the staff we have? Who would be responsible for it? Who would, just some ideas on how we can do it while we're doing all of it.
Right, exactly. The question was, how do we do this in a small library without staff and without having one person who's going to be doing all of this? And it's actually, I think, relatively easy because there are my blog and there's another, a guy from the state library in Montana who puts out a monthly learning, free learning webinar posting, and I add most of that to my blog. So that if you just communicated the value of continuous learning and pointed people to the opportunities, that's really the beginning of it. I don't think people realize that there are 8 pages of free webinars this month that are available in all aspects, and that's just pretty much library science. You go into other things like leadership and professional development and all those other aspects, and there's tons out there. There are all kinds of hands. I don't know who was first. Go ahead.
Okay, so speaking of free and sharing, I liked your class title, Philosophy of Supervision, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Are those materials available for us to take a look at?
The question is the philosophy of supervision materials available? I do believe that Prezi is open to the public. So the basic constructs of it are online. It'd be under me. You could search for me. I do Prezi a lot. It's a great way to think because you can storyboard and think in concepts and grouping of concepts. And so most of the Prezis that I do for training or for that kind of stuff, presentations are on there and I make them shareable. So feel free.
Can you speak a little about the reactions of some of the staff at different levels within the organization and whether, I know you said that they were excited about some parts, but has there been any pushback or how have you dealt with some resistance? And I'm especially thinking of the fact that a lot of this takes time that some people may not think they have to commit to it.
The question was, how do you present this and deal with staff reactions? What kind of reactions have we had, and whether or not there has been resistance, and how to deal with that? It's been really interesting because the response has been overwhelmingly positive. And it's heartwarming because people have come up to me who you think of as sort of those curmudgeons in the library, those unengaged, and they have said, "You are making a difference." this is making a difference in our lives. I'm happier to come to work than I was before. That's hugely telling. We have not had a lot of pushback. We have had to continue to communicate the fact that, specifically to supervisors, that they need to approve this time for their people. Because we have had a number of people complain that when they've asked in the past, they've been told it's not part of your job, you can't do it. And what we are saying about this professional development is these are our criteria. It applies directly to your job. It would benefit the library as a whole. It would benefit the campus as a whole. So there's no knitting and surfing and, that kind of stuff in there. But it's pretty broad. As I said, we may be training people into another position, which is where they maybe really belong. We have one individual who's taking accounting classes because that's an area that she feels is part of her job as circulation, as well as something she wants to move into. Another staff member is taking classes on HR. We have our own library HR, so that both benefits us and if she moves into the campus HR environment. So it's broadening the scope, talking with supervisors. And we've had only, in all of our job descriptions, this was before I came, so I can't take credit for this. They had decided to put in that one of the job descriptions was that each individual spends 5% of their time on learning and training. So that has been helpful. We've had one employee who has fought that tooth and nail. She's got her job down, pat. She knows how to do it. She's perfected it. I don't want to learn anything else. This is what I do, and I'm really darn good at it. She finally has agreed. We've even gone to the unions and talked with her. So she finally has agreed. But it's kind of still unsettled. And then just recently, we opened up some HR training on how to be a supervisor. She supervises student assistants. So we opened that up to the supervisors of students. I couldn't believe it. She said, put me on the list. I want to do this. So here's someone who didn't want to learn anything. And in 9 months, the message is coming. And maybe what she just needed was, that was what she wanted, was supervisory training and had never been offered before. I don't know. So we haven't had to fight too much resistance. There were other hands earlier, and I don't want to keep anyone from asking. Yes?
If you do this student assistant onboarding program, you said you have like surveys and videos. Do you get IRB approval to do that, or you just do the survey?
Okay, as far as the student training and the survey and the videos we actually made ourselves. In fact, one video is of our university librarian talking about the value of student assistants and how much we appreciate them. That's how it opens. So they get the very top dog saying, you count, which is neat. And then we had videos of students speaking and talking about what they liked about it. Some of the other videos that we've embedded into it that are available to learn from, the more I'm speaking now more of the philosophy of supervision class, those are ones that are on YouTube that are on live. So as long as you cite where they're from and give credit.
Do you have to get the institutional review board like permission to do that, or you can just do it in the library?
She's asking if we have to get institutional review board approval, and we just do it within the library. I wonder if I was supposed to get institutional now that I think about it. I don't think for employee surveys you have to do that. I think if you're going to the general public, you do.
It sounds like you're tracking some of what employees are doing. I was wondering what seems to be most successful, in-house kind of speakers that you've done, or online learning opportunities. If you can tell if there's patterns as to what people are trying out and what's working.
Mm-hmm. The question is, now that I'm tracking what people are doing, am I seeing any patterns of what they're doing, what they like the best, and so on and so forth. Some of the online stuff, they don't have to go through me. we want it so open that we have a form that asks them to get approval by their supervisor for the time. But I'm not forcing that anybody's throat. If they want to do this, they can do it, kind of thing. So some of them we don't have any records of. It's only what we have records of. Actually, the most well-attended and anticipated were the fire extinguisher training and the first aid and CPR training. We are now having, I think it's next week or the week after, the campus folks are coming in and doing disaster preparedness training. We also have official first responder training that fewer people are going to go to, but any of them going to that would be really helpful. So the in-person ones, that has been the most appreciated. It has nothing to do with libraries. Isn't that interesting? And then each department has their own things they want to do. Cataloging is doing their things, and acquisitions doing their things, and the reference librarians are doing open access journal and scholarship, and so all this other stuff is happening besides what I do. And because the librarians had set up some of their own stuff already, I'm not stepping on their toes and trying to take that away. I love that initiative, and I'm just kind of a part of promoting it alongside them. One more question or comment? I just hope this is helpful. I know that like I said, we as librarians do a lot of professional growth and development, and we see this as our career, but a lot of other people do too in libraries. And supporting everybody and making this a team effort helps break down some of those silos and breaks down the top-down sort of stuff. Thank you all for your attention and questions.